In this episode, I'm here with Lexi Stinger, Regional Manager of 3 different Club Pilates locations in the Texas area. What you're about to hear is a recorded clip of an interview that I had with Lexi at GSD Con, the #1 fitness studio and gym conference in the world. The reason I had her on is because she saw such explosive growth at all 3 locations, and I had to ask her what she did differently in order to see that growth happen. I thought her information and the stuff she shared was so valuable that I had to make it an episode on the GSD Show. So, enjoy the show. Lexi's absolutely represented the position of a manager, of a leader at the highest level. And the conversations I've had with her, I'm like, man, you are good, you are good. She works for Elisa Pontone, who is one of our members here, and Elisa's fantastic, and the relationship they have is so tight. So, Lexi, what are the locations? Where are the 3 locations that you guys have?
We have 3 studios in the Houston area.
I have. You see that? Owning it, right?
We have 3 studios in the Houston area.
And where are they? What are the
They
names?
are in Katy, Texas, and the Memorial west side of Houston, and then in the Heights, which is more north central Houston.
Okay. And when did you start working with Club Pilates?
I started working with Elisa and Nate, her brother, who co-own, in 2018, February. I started out as an instructor with them, and they had 2 studios at the time, and I taught at both, and then I got promoted to the lead instructor over those 2 locations. And then right before COVID, they opened their 3rd in the Heights, and as lead instructor, I helped them open that studio with recruiting, getting the schedule built out, and then had a really honest conversation with them in January of 2021, just saying there's areas where I feel like I'm not being developed, and I want to learn sales. I want to learn how to be a better leader. I want to have an entrepreneurial mindset. And I just feel like there's no growth left for me here. And they said, okay, wait a minute. Can you give us a couple days to come back with some ideas? So they presented a general manager position to me over 1 studio. And I accepted and did that for about a year, and then became regional manager actually 1 week after the leadership conference last year.
Yeah, very cool. An instructor that comes to you and says, I want to learn sales. That's pretty refreshing, isn't it? Yeah.
Your lead slipping through the cracks? Does managing your software keep you up at night? Does customer support take days, weeks, or even months to get back to you? We get it. Fit Pro Tracker was developed by gym owners for gym owners. With Fit Pro Tracker, you can easily process payments, create and sell products, schedule your sessions, market your business, and communicate with your contacts, all in one fitness software. See why hundreds of gym owners are making the switch to Fit Pro Tracker today.
Do you know what the revenue numbers were for the studios when you first came on board?
Before COVID, not so much.
Okay.
But I know when I started becoming a regional manager in February, or a general manager in February of 2021, the studio was doing about $35,000.
$35,000. And now you're, and what about the other 2 studios? What were they doing at the time?
Heights was just opening, so I don't know really how well they were operating. They opened about a week before COVID, so they had a rough go of it in the beginning. Memorial was probably doing about the same. You know, we were all coming out of COVID. Everything kind of slowed down.
Once you became a regional manager, what were the revenue numbers?
When I became regional, I'd been a manager of KD for about a year, so that studio was doing close to $80,000 at the time.
35? Mm-hmm. So you took it at 35, you brought it to 85?
Yes.
It's pretty good, right? And what time frame?
Well, so now that January, they just did 98,000.
98,000.
Yes.
Dang. And what about the other 2? What were they at when you first came on board, and what are they at now?
The Heights studio, when I first started, they had done about 33,000, and in January, recurring revenue, they just closed at 56,000.
Very cool. And the other one?
And Memorial, they did about 55 when I started as regional manager. They just closed the month at 85.
Dang, all 3 just rising up. All right. So what we want to know is, what did you focus on in the manager role, and what do you currently have your managers focusing on in that manager role in order to ensure the success of each location? Because obviously they're successful.
The 2 KPIs as a general manager that I was tied to were revenue and retention. So keeping our attrition numbers below 7%.
Okay.
So within that, activities that I focused on to make sure I was hitting those numbers were lead generation, how many leads were coming into the studio, how many appointments am I booking each shift, what's our call volume, am I making the right amount of contacts to get people in for their first visit, how many am I closing per visit, things like that to drive the revenue. And then we also have retail sales, private training sales that I would focus on as well. And then for retention, we've created some things at the studios where we now do monthly member workshops that are free for all of our members, which I think has helped people get better results, so they're coming more. We implemented member retention strategy, so once someone becomes a member, we contact them their first day, their 5th day, their 7th day, their 14th, 21, 30, 60, 90, getting all of those things in place to make sure that they're using the membership, because when they don't use it, they don't get results. When they don't see results, they quit.
Yeah, I like that. Now, obviously, like you take somebody in Serena and Libby's example, Serena, the manager, Libby, the manager, reports to Serena, the owner, which makes sense because they're not at the point where they have a regional just yet. But in this case, as Serena continues to develop, eventually you would be reporting to a Serena, and then the manager's reporting to you. So what I want to know is, what does your rhythm look like with your managers in regards to the meeting rhythms? You know, when do you guys meet? How often, right? How long do you meet for? And are meetings different as far as what you do in those meetings? Like I know a lot of them, our Monday meetings are different than our Tuesday through Friday meetings. What are the KPIs? Like all that. Just walk me through the vision of the role and the relationship you have with your managers.
My managers are great. They're all very different, so I think that's been interesting. Becoming regional manager, you're less focused on driving the numbers yourself, and how do you really get to know your team and motivate them and empower them and hold them accountable. So that's been a kind of a big learning lesson for me in this last year. We meet as a team once a month with all 3 general managers and myself.
Okay.
And then I meet weekly with each general manager, and depending on what week of the month it is, we're either looking at planning for the future month, going over a closeout, mid-month, how are we on pace with our goals? Are we below pace, over pace? Do we need to, where are our bottlenecks and where do we need to get better? So it kind of just depends on what week of the month it is. And then I do daily check-ins as well. So just 5-minute calls, quick. What are we focusing on today? What do we do well? What could we do better next time? What do you need from me?
I love that. And they usually last about 5 minutes?
5-15. I have some team members where, like you and McKenna, we can get distracted and go on tangents. So those go longer. But
if you can get distracted in the huddle and be done in 15, that's a decent deal.
Yeah.
That's okay. With the KPIs that you have in place for your managers, you have KPIs, obviously, with Elisa. Mm-hmm. How does Lisa measure your success? How do you know if you're winning or losing?
They're looking for me, they're looking at, is the studio growing? Is the revenue growing? Number of memberships sold growing? They hold me accountable to employee retention. Are our staff feeling taken care of? How long are they staying with us? And then member retention as well.
What are some things that you do in order to increase and improve employee retention? Which, by the way, depending on where your business is at, employee retention may not be the metric that's most important. If you have some cleaning to do, you have some house cleaning to do, especially after knowing the ABC players, employee retention may not be the metric for you at the moment. Once you start getting this stuff down, you got the 5 dysfunctions down, yeah, absolutely, employee retention is a really good thing. It helps you make sure you're doing the right thing. So what are some things you have in place in order to make sure that employee retention remains where you want it to be?
I think a lot of it comes down to Elisa, honestly, and Nate. They've created a really great vision for the studio, and we say a lot, your vibe attracts your tribe. And Elisa has done a really great job creating an environment that's very empowering, very passionate, very encouraging and uplifting, and I think people just like being around that, right? It's the different kinds of drugs, right? And they want to be involved in something that feels like they're making a difference and beyond themselves.
How's your relationship with you and Elisa? How often do you guys meet?
Our relationship's awesome. We have a very personal relationship as well as professional, and that's grown a lot over the 6 years that I've been with her. And she's transferred a lot of authority onto me. I feel supported from her, but she really lets me take the reins on a lot of things. So we meet monthly on business things.
Okay. When you say I feel supported, what does she do that makes you feel supported?
I think the words that she speaks over me and she sees things in me that I maybe not see in myself, and she helps pull those out of me and encourage me in them and just speaks that.
One of the things we've talked about at GSD Con before that's a really great trait of a leader is you believe in your people more than they believe in themselves. Because usually people believe in themselves less than they actually should. Like they actually could do a lot better than they're giving themselves credit for, whether it's just they want to be humble or they just are humble or they're just trained by society to speak in that particular way. But, you know, that's great. I mean, when you look at it, someone as strong and someone as effective as Elisa, even she has area to believe in herself even more, but that's what gives Elisa that opportunity to step in and be that leader, which continues to level up Elisa. And because people like Lexi, because people like Lexi don't really have a lid, meaning there's no end to the potential, there's always going to be an area of opportunity for Elisa to believe in Lexi more than she believes in herself. Does that make sense? So that just keeps on going. How does that translate to you and your team? Do you find yourself carrying some of the things that maybe Elisa didn't teach you by words, but by actions? Have you noticed yourself doing that to your people?
I hope so. There's always room to grow. I think you have to lead differently based on the person, and each of my general managers are very different, but I always want them to know that they can come to me for anything, and I try to keep that line of communication really open. So I hope so.
If there's people in the room that are, let's say, studio managers right now, or regional managers, what are some things that you think would help them be a better manager, better leader, if they just focused on these particular things a little bit more?
I think it depends on what the studio's struggle is. I mean, one of my studio's revenue, it was really low when I started on, and so get back to the basics, like get back to the foundations of things, call volumes, appointments, books, things like that. Don't be distracted by the other things. We ask a lot of our general managers. They have to be customer service experts. They have to be sales managers. You know, they have to be, we require a lot marketing, B2B, you know, kind of eliminate the distractions, pick the 3 things that you want to get really good at, and evaluate time versus impact. What's going to make a lot of impact, maybe not require a lot of time, start there, you know, and then that'll build your confidence to go attack those things that are going to require more time and have just as much impact.
I love that. I want everyone to hear that point. That's a very important one. Whenever you notice a studio that normally is driving like this, and they just have a sudden dip, it's usually because they've gotten away from the basics. That's usually what it is. They work so hard to get good at these fundamental principles that got them here. They got so good at it with that hard work, but then what happens is you start doing some other stuff. And next thing you know, the stuff that you worked hard to be good at doesn't get to play as much. And now numbers start to drop. And they don't know why, because they're still working as hard as they worked on before. They're just working on the distractions and not the stuff that they already got good at through hard work and effort. Make sense? So that's usually, even in sales, I already knew, like, sales numbers drop, we drifted. That's it. We're not following the process. It's not that you're not working hard, it's that you've changed the principles that you've worked hard to get you here, now we're here. Does that make sense? Yeah? For the owners in the room that would love to have a really good studio manager, whether they've already got one that they just continue wanting to level up, or they don't have one, they're looking for one, what do you believe would make a good a studio manager now that you're overseeing 3 of them? Like, what do you look for in that person?
I want someone who doesn't wait to be told to do things. You know, they're self-starters. They're passionate about learning and improving themselves and others around them. Someone who's reliable. When they say they're going to do something, they do it. Someone who's a good communicator and is enthusiastic. They're passionate about their job. That's one of our core values, is passion. So I definitely look for that. High energy.
What are your other values?
Service. So go above and beyond, not just for your members, but for your teammates. You know, we want to serve each other and those who are coming into our doors. Passion, encouragement, and empowerment is one of our values. It takes a lot for someone to come into a gym, especially if they haven't been active for several years, and it can be intimidating. So we want to create a safe space for them to feel empowered and successful in coming for their first time.
I love it. I love it. She's really good. She knows what makes a good manager. She's been one. She leads 3. They're all growing the businesses. Okay? Sounds good? Can we get a round of applause for Lexi, everybody? Awesome. Good job.
Thank you.